Welcome to the Movie Business Podcast, picking up where Movie Business Book left off. I'm Jason Squire, hosting a wide range of industry talent and executives to answer fundamental questions about the business today. Here we go. And we're delving into the future with David S. GOYER, who has served as writer, director, producer, and/or showrunner for franchises The Dark Knight, Man of Steel, Blade, and Foundation, plus other movies and series. He is executive producer of MURDERBOT, upcoming from Apple TV+. David wrote the story for 3 Black Ops video games and also wrote and executive produced the groundbreaking VR series VADER IMMORTAL for Lucasfilm and Oculus. Online, he created Emergence, an AI-powered game on the Incention platform where anyone can participate in its world building. Welcome, David.
Thank you.
It's very nice of you to be here, and it's really awesome to track the emergence of Emergence. What are the secrets of Emergence via Incention?
Okay, well, just to clarify a tiny thing, it's not precisely a video game. It's and this will be a little hard to nutshell, but Emergence effectively is a use case for a new way of creating properties or intellectual property, and also potentially a new way for monetizing and contributing to intellectual property. So one of the things that's happening in the Web3 blockchain space right now is people are starting to think about different ways to register your IP and what that means, and track your IP and collaborate with your IP. So what that means is, say that you are initially a small-time creator and you do digital art, or you create online comic books and you want to branch out and have t-shirts made or posters made or coffee mugs made of your property. What you can do is register your creation, and with these new tools, set terms for how people can collaborate with you. You can decide, here's the style guide of my property, or no profanity, or whatever it is. You can decide anything you want, and with a series of toggles, say this, and this, and you have permission to do it. We don't have to create a licensing agreement. It's all created and tracked on the blockchain. And you can do whatever you want, and I get 5%, or I get 1%, or I get 10%. And all of this is tracked seamlessly and in the background. And then as people collaborate with you and monetize their efforts, it pays the original creator and tracks that and kicks that back. Another example is people are starting to put music libraries on the blockchain and sell fractional rights of those libraries. So if you want, you could put the music library of, some people are doing with some Blackpink songs, and this is getting very granular and technical, I know, and then you can become a partial rights holder in the royalty stream, or the money that's coming back from Spotify. There's all sorts of different ways that this can happen. And so I was involved both in advising on the kind of underlying technology, which is a company called Story that's beneath Incention, and on Incention itself. And we realized one of the things that we needed to do was create a use case for this to show how it would work. And so they asked me to create a universe, which is Emergence. And I did that, and I wrote a Bible and worked with a bunch of very talented concept artists to flesh out the basic designs of these characters. And as we say, Emergence is built to be built upon. So I tried to create, I guess, the yogurt starter for this world. And then we're putting it up on this platform, and we're going to allow people to contribute. We're going to allow people to make T-shirts or bobbleheads or online comics or what have you, and they can profit from those. See, right now, or prior to this, if you were a fan and you were sending in a design to Marvel Comics or DC Comics, the best you could hope for is perhaps to get your design published in that comic book. But there was no way for your contribution to ever really be formally adopted into the universe or into canon, where there's this, very robust fan fiction environments out there. There's a huge fan fiction for Star Wars and things like that, but there's no way for the people that are writing that fan fiction for any of that to sort of cycle back upstream into Star Wars. And there's no way for them to make any money off of it. So this is an attempt to see if we can alter that. Another example is I was working on I won't name the property, but a very well-known property. And we were talking to the studio, a traditional studio, about doing merchandise for this property. And we heard a pitch from their merchandising department about T-shirts and coffee mugs and the like for this property. And they showed us all these designs. And they just, to be frank, they weren't very good. And in real time, we were on a Zoom. I went onto Etsy, where I knew there was a lot of bootleg merchandise available on Etsy for this property, and a lot of it was better than the official stuff, right?
That's very good.
And so I said, "This is better. Why don't we reach out to some of these people and formally bring them into the fold?" And this is 2 or 3 years ago. And their legal department said there's just no way to do that. It's just too much of a mess. So what we're trying to do with Emergence and Incention, also built on this blockchain property called Story, is to show people a way that this could work. Because right now what's happening is a lot of people, on one hand, are creating a lot of unofficial merchandise, and the legacy studios are sending out a lot of cease and desist letters to all these people. And it's like whack-a-mole. And the problem with most of these creators is they're small time and they might be good, but they don't have the money to hire a lawyer and create a licensing agreement with Disney or Marvel or DC. And what we're trying to do here with Emergence is show people a different way that it could work. And by the same token, what we're also trying to solve is that when you've got these amazing pieces of IP, whether it be, not all of them, I'm just generalizing, but whether it be James Bond or Star Wars or whatnot, sometimes you've got a lot of different stakeholders at the studios. You've got 20, 30 different representatives from different corporate divisions that are saying, well, we need to do this or we need to do that, or we don't want to take any risk because we're worried about our multi-billion-dollar investment. We don't want to damage it. But that's also a terrible way to promote innovation. It stifles innovation. So we're trying to figure out another solve is, well, what if you could take a legacy property and put it on this platform? Again, I'm just using an example. I'm not saying this is literal. Darth Maul, and just say, okay, we'll allow creators to do Darth Maul T-shirts and come up with their own Darth Maul mugs, and as long as they do A, B, and C, no pornography, no this, no that, or fit this basic style guide, they don't have to create licensing agreements with us, and they can keep 80% of the profits. And so it allows people to potentially have this much more active relationship with the properties that they love. And it also, if it works right the other way, is it might open the eyes of the people that are holding on to these very profitable IP, and it might sort of energize innovation. That's an incredibly long-winded response. But
from the master. Wait a second, okay?
Yeah.
Now, look, here's the thing. The material is online. You kindly put it online, the Bible for Emergence.
Yes.
And anybody can read it. Does that mean that is it possible for a creative to contribute to the content somehow?
Yes. So it's all very early. I mean, we're public, but technically it's almost still in beta form.
Right.
In fact, we're just publishing a second version of the Bible in the coming weeks. But yes, this is all going to be rolling out over the course of the next year or two. But yes, there will be three ways that they can contribute. The first is if they want to generate their own merchandise, what have you, off of the existing material, they can do that, and they will get to keep the lion's share of the profits themselves. We would just take a tiny, tiny fraction of it. The second way that they can contribute is we're going to allow them to vote in which direction we take, or possibly even what medium we go into next. We're already readying a narrative podcast and a comic book. And there's some other things we're working on for it. But the final way, and we haven't decided on the exact mechanism for this, but hopefully we'll get it all worked out in the next year or so, is that there will be a way for contributors to create something, and we will have an editorial board that will review it and then vote on whether or not something that's created outside of our ecosystem can then become canon. And there will be a way for that to work. And then the person that creates that element, whether it be a character or a song or really anything, the blockchain will track the provenance of that specific element and give them a fraction of the broader franchise moving forward. So basically what I'm trying to do is answer the question of my sort of 14-year-old self was, sitting at home as a kid, what if I could create a character that would show up in Spider-Man or the Incredible Hulk?
Right. This is all so fascinating. And so the bottom line is to stay tuned and check out the Emergence website and see what's out there, because there's a lot of content already there. And as it rolls out, it's going to be fascinating because you are on the road to creating a new business model and democratizing this particular project. So can I pivot to another part of your career?
Sure.
Turning to your fame and accomplishments as showrunner. What are the lessons you've learned as a showrunner?
I personally think showrunning is the hardest job in the entertainment business. I think it's harder than directing or producing a single film, because you have to simultaneously think about, 6 or 8 or 10 or 12 different episodes. And in my case, sometimes I direct some of the episodes, but you have to make sure that all of these disparate directors and writers and department heads and actors, you're trying to find a balance between allowing them to create and bring their own personal touch to the broader tapestry, but at the same time making sure that it fits within the broader tapestry. And as a showrunner, I'm constantly zooming out and zooming in. So I'm often trying to look at things from 20,000 feet, and I can't be involved in the granular level on every single thing because it's more than enough for 10 people to do, much less one person. But then at the same time, there are times when I will get very granular and say, well, this doesn't work or that doesn't work. And so part of show running is knowing when to tighten up the reins and when to let go of the reins and not lose yourself in the details. And a giant part is also picking your team and making sure that you're clear about communicating what that vision is, and that you have successfully described or explicated that vision to the production designer or to some of the other directors or some of the other writers. And so I've always written show Bibles, and I've created mood boards for shows. On a lot of the shows that I work on, we have a big art room where we say, I call it this, not this. So we'll just have images that we pulled from Pinterest or whatnot and said, this is the vibe of the show. This is the palette of our show. And over here, this is not the vibe of our show, and this is not the palette of our show.
Good.
And another really important piece is what we call tone meetings. And so I will typically sit down with a given director and assistant director and director of photography. And on a lot of my shows, we have multiple art directors because the show's too big for one. And I will go through the script page by page and just say, this is what the scene is about, or this is what the subtext of the scene is about. Or I will make sure, if it's a continuing storyline, and most of the shows that I work on are, I will say this scene relates to this prior scene in episode 2, or what we're doing in this scene is we're setting up something that's going to pay off in episode 7. And so you just need to make sure that you've read the major stakeholders of that episode into the broader tapestry of the show, because the best shows feel cohesive. and they feel as if they're coming from a singular vision. And I think that they're coming from a singular vision in that the showrunner is, directing the broader streams, but it really does take a village. I think at the height of something like Foundation, even during production, much less post-production, we easily had over 1,000 people working on the show.
Oh my God!
Wow. And when you factor in post-production and all the individual artists working in VFX, it's probably over 5,000. It's a lot.
That's really extraordinary. My goodness. And the results are so wonderful, but it's such a complex job. Thank you for the lessons. Let's turn to your general advice for young creatives who want to enter the business. What are you telling them these days?
Create what you're passionate about. Don't try to create something for the market. The market's changing so quickly. Half the time, if you try to do something that's very in at the moment, by the time you get it out there, it will be out of favor. If you're a writer, write things that you're passionate about. I think people are always interested in a singular vision. People are interested in something that feels fresh and new. I mean, they say there aren't any original stories, but there are stories, and there will be stories every generation that are reframed by new people that feel singular and different. And no matter how big or small a project is, if it feels, I'm thinking back to, I don't know, Fleabag, for instance, particularly when the second season came out. I mean, that just felt so fresh and so funny. Or Beef, which was a show on Netflix, so different. White Lotus is another one. These aren't necessarily big shows. I really liked Fallout as well, and I'm a fan of Game of Thrones. But I think a lot of times people just want to be excited and see something different. And that's often at odds with the studios, because the studios, left to their own devices, all that we would see are remakes and sequels. And they're not idiots. They know that new material has to be created, but they're afraid. They're afraid because they want to be able to rest on the laurels of something that has worked before, or something that has pre-existing awareness. Right. And that doesn't mean that you can't create a sequel or a remake or a prequel that's interesting. It's just, I think you have to come up with a reason for it to exist outside of just commerce, because a lot of times audiences, I think they have a lot more taste than we give them credit for. And they can spot something that's just a piece of commerce that doesn't have a reason to exist beyond just trying to hit the money bank again.
And, it's also great that newbies can simply do it themselves and upload on the web. There have been directors plucked from the web. Back in the day, you couldn't do it.
I mean, when I was in high school, I applied to USC Film School. I had never even read or seen a screenplay before. The internet didn't exist. So the first time I read a screenplay was when I came to USC, and they had a screenplay library. I had no idea what formatting was. And, we could make Super 8 films, and I did make Super 8 films, but now you can record entire movies on your iPhone. Now you can edit on your laptop. Now you can use AI. I mean, all the time we'll use AI just to get an idea of something. If we're trying to cut together a trailer or something, we'll just toss it in and see what it sounds like. Not to fool the audience, but say, does this even work? And then if we think it works, we'll go to the actors and say, what about this? There's so many tools available that just did not exist. And you're absolutely right. There have been a number of deals that have been made over the course of the last decade where someone has made a short film and loaded it up onto YouTube, and it's gained the attraction of, major studios. And but the thing I'm most excited about now is what if someone can do that and there are means to release it or monetize it that even circumvent the major studios.
Well, that's the DIY model that slowly happens if the budget is low enough, and it's either an entree to bigger movies, independent movies. This is the independent model of today. That's right.
Yeah, there are a lot of opportunities for creators today that simply did not exist when I was coming up.
Let's turn to kind of an overview question. What's your prognosis for the business?
I was I was having lunch with a friend, another old timer, because I realize I am an old timer now. I sold my first screenplay when I was 21, so I'm 58.
I remember.
And I've been
remember.
I've been in the business for, 37 years, which is insane. But I started so young, and I don't know. I mean, here's the negative side. I'm glad I'm not coming out now because things are changing so quickly. There's so much volatility. It's not just the streamers. Obviously, Netflix upended everything, but it's still upending. You know, at the time, the thought of licensing, a studio licensing their properties to Netflix, everyone decided, no, we're not going to do that. Well, now we've gone back to that. And people are selling, secondary and, third windows to their properties to Netflix. And so, no, I mean, what I think is going to happen on the streaming side is that it's going to consolidate and we'll have 3 or 4 streamers in the same way that we used to have 3 or 4 networks. And I don't think that's going to be particularly good for the business or for the creators or even for the consumer, because I think competition makes for a more interesting level playing field. And then eventually they'll be hit with various antitrust lawsuits that will break them up, or another form of distribution will emerge in the same way that Netflix did that will disrupt everything. So I think that will happen. But we've also had AI is obviously disrupting everything right now, and no one knows where that's going. I was afraid of AI. I'm still concerned about AI, but I also am not so naive to think that it's going away. So one of the reasons I became involved with Incention was because I wanted to experiment with it as well, and at least have a hand in a tiny way of seeing if it can be utilized as a tool that can help artists and that can lower barriers to entry and can democratize some of the creation aspect. It's a Wild West right now. We've got to get firm rules around the way that AI can scrape content and learn about content. We have to make sure that AI isn't just replacing actors. Because the other caution is, do I think we'll get to a place where AI can create an entire feature in the next 5 years? Absolutely. Or write scripts? Absolutely. We're there now.
Right.
The question is, are they any good?
Oh, yes.
And most of them aren't. And the other thing that's scary is, what if all the large language models, what if we get to a point where it's so self-reflexive or recursive that they're only iterating on AI? So it's just like making a Xerox of a Xerox of a Xerox of a Xerox, and there's no fresh ideas in there. And I think that's the other concern as well, is that we might enter a phase where a lot of really generic, I can't even call it art, content is being created. And I think the audience will become dissatisfied with that. So I don't really know where everything is going. I don't think anyone knows where it's going. It's just a very, very volatile time. And I'm glad that I have the CV and the foothold in the business that allows me to still participate in a way. I've had enough success, and they think I have a good head on my shoulders and I'm a firm hand on the tiller, that I probably am fine until I choose to retire. But I think it's a hard time if you're a mid-level writer right now. And one of the reasons why I started working in VR and in the Web3 space is because I wanted to remain, I have an interest in technology, but I wanted to keep vital and I wanted to keep learning, and I didn't want to become a Luddite and be left behind.
Well, it sounds like you're having fun, and that's the main thing. And
I am. I am.
Good. Well, we've come to the end of this analysis of the business, and especially the very interesting material that you're getting involved in as you are heading along into the future of technology and entertainment. So I want to thank you, David. Thank you so much for being a guest on the Movie Business Podcast. Thank you.
Thanks for having me.